So the first thing that we need to do here is we need to create a player ship that moves side to side. So that's going to be pretty easy and pretty standard for what we've done before. So we'll go ahead and we'll jump right into it. All right, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to right click and we're going to create an empty. We're going to name this one player. And then we're going to go ahead and right click on the player and we're going to create a 2D object in a sprite. And we're going to go ahead and use a square for now as a placeholder. And then a little bit later here, we will add a spaceship instead. So we're going to go ahead and call this one the rocket. This is going to be the player rocket. And then we'll go ahead and we will resize this a little bit just to make it look a little bit better. How our spaceship's going to look. And then we'll go ahead and move it down here to where we want it. Maybe -3 or -4 is pretty good. And then what we're going to need to do is we're going to want to add the script. So we're going to go down here. We're going to create a folder. We're going to call this one scripts. And then inside scripts, we're going to create a C# script and we're going to call this one player movement. And we'll go ahead and open that up. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set a float here for speed. So we're going to make this a serialized field so we can change it in the editor. And we're going to name this one speed. And for now, we're going to go ahead and set it to 10, I think. Next, we're going to need vector 2 here for our movement. So we're going to call vector 2 and we'll call it movement. And then we're also going to need a reference for our rigid body. So we're going to need a rigid body 2D, and we're going to simply call this one RB for rigid body. And then here in the start, we're going to go ahead and set the rigid body RB to the get component for our rigid body 2D here. And then in update for the movement, we're going to use get axis raw. So we're going to go ahead and save movement is equal to, and this is going to be equal to a new vector 2. And this is going to be the input dot get axis raw. And here we, inside the parentheses, we can simply use the word horizontal. And then we're going to do a comma. And then since we don't want to do anything for the vertical, since we're only going to be moving horizontally left and right, we're going to go ahead and simply put in a 0 here and call that good. And the last thing we're going to need to do here after start is we're going to need to do a fixed update. So inside here, what we're going to do is we're going to move the rigid body. So we're going to do RB dot, and if we do move position here, then we have to tell it how we want to move. So we want to move from the current RB dot position, and we're going to add to that position, we're going to add our movement that we set up, and we're going to multiply this by the speed, and then time dot delta time to keep it frame rate independent here. And then we'll go ahead and we'll save all of this. And now how we're using this horizontal here is back in the editor. If we go into edit and project settings, and then if we click on the input manager, there's a bunch of these axes already set up. So by default from Unity, so we have this horizontal one. So this is already set up by default for us, and we can use this to move left and right. And this is going to be for our arrows, or we can also use A and D. So this is going to go ahead and move us left or right automatically. There's also vertical, and there's some other ones here that we can use by default. So now this isn't going to do anything quite yet. We still need to come back to our rocket, and we need to add in a rigid body. So we're going to go ahead and add in that rigid body 2D, and we're going to go ahead and turn the gravity scale from 1 to 0 right away, because otherwise the player is simply going to drop down to the ground. And after we add the rigid body here, we're also going to need to add the script. So we'll go ahead and add the script. And I messed up. I actually want to add these things to the actual player, not to the rocket. So we're going to go into the rocket. We're going to do the rigid body 2D, and then we're going to add the player movement script here and remove them from the rocket. And then if we go ahead and save this and click on play, we should be able to move our player left and right, which we can do. However, we can see that the player is dropping still. So we'll need to come back into the player and the rigid body, and I never changed this back to 0. So we're going to change that to, we'll stop playing the game. We'll change this back to 0. And now we'll play again, and now he shouldn't be dropping. However, they should be able to move left and right pretty easily. And actually, the speed that we have seems good, so I think we'll stick it with that for now. So the next step here is to create a few enemy types. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. We'll make some prefabs for the enemies. We'll maybe make 3 of them, and then we're also gonna add an actual player ship instead of the square. And then after we do this, we'll go ahead and start working on making the enemies move down in a grid. So I'm not real big on art, so I'm not going to create my own ship, but definitely feel free to create your own ship and your own enemies. I'm coming on the asset store here, and I just found a free asset for the ship, and I think we'll use this one for the player, and then a couple of these other ones for some enemies. So I'm gonna go ahead and use this, and I'm gonna do add to my assets, accept, and then I'm gonna go ahead and open in Unity. And then it's going to take me directly there. So I'm going to go ahead and download these and then import. And I'll go ahead and import all of this. All right, so I looked at these ships, and the one that I think I'm going to use for the player is the number 4 here. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that onto the screen. And then what we'll do is I'm going to actually put this under the player. And then I'm going to, it is pretty small here, so I'm going to scale this up by 2. And then we'll rotate this by 180 here on the Z-axis. So it's actually facing up. And then we're going to move this back to where we had the other one as well. So I believe it was -4. So it's basically right on that block. And then we're going to delete this cube, and we'll go ahead and rename this one to ship. And so now we've got our player added in here. And again, if we click play, test it out, we should still be able to move our player left and right without issue. All right, and so now we're gonna want to add our enemies, and I think I'm gonna do 3 enemies. So I'll just select a couple of these, add them in here. We'll do 5, 3, and 2. And then I'm just going to move these off to the side here a little bit so we can see all of them. And now they are pretty small, but I think that's okay for the enemies. I think that'll be fine. Maybe this one we'll want to size up a little bit. He's kind of tiny. Maybe let's go with 1.5. Make him a decent size. So now I think they're all the right size. And then what we'll do is I'll go ahead and kind of play with the colors. I think I don't want them to be this color. And then I'm also going to change the background of the camera here. So I'm just going to go ahead and make this black right away. And then I'm going to mess with the color for each of these ships to find some different colors, I think. Just so they all kind of stand out. All right, so these are the colors I think I'm going to go with for the enemies for now. And what we're going to want to do as well is down here in the assets folder, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this one prefabs. And then I'm going to make the player a prefab. So I'm going to drag that down here first. It's going to change blue. And then we're going to rename all of these. So this one I'm going to rename to green enemy. Then this one will be red enemy. And then purple enemy. And then we're also going to want to make prefabs for all of these. So I'm going to do the same thing, drag them all down there as well. And then now we're going to go ahead and get started on the grid movement for the enemies. All right, so for the enemy movement here, it's going to be pretty simple. It's going to be a lot easier than you would expect it to be. We're going to be using the on trigger enter 2D method this time, very similar to how we've done in the past with the on collision enter. A couple of different changes, but very similar. So we'll go ahead, and the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to create an empty here. And on this empty, we'll go ahead and we'll reset that to the zeros, and then we're going to add the component, and on here we're going to want to add a box collider. So we'll do a box collider 2D. And then we're going to want to go ahead and set this box collider up. So we'll go ahead and we'll make it as tall as our game screen here. The width is kind of irrelevant. And then we'll go ahead and we'll move this over. And we'll start this one on the left here. And then we're going to do Control D and we'll move this one to the right. So we're going to have two of them. And then we'll go ahead and rename this. I'm just going to rename it wall. And then we're going to want to, on both of these, we're also going to want to mark these as is trigger here. And then for our enemies, we don't want the enemies to move by themselves, so one by one. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to also create another empty object here. And this one, we're just going to call it enemies. And so we're going to group all of our enemies in here. So I'm going to go ahead and reset this to 0 here, and then select our enemies that we have currently and put them in here. And now we have the enemy object. So if we move this, it'll move all of the enemies at the same time. And then one other thing that we need to do for this is we're going to need to add a component here, and we're also going to need a box collider for this. And if we click the edit box collider here, we're going to want to make this one same size roughly as our enemies. And we're going to adjust this here in a little bit. Once we get this working, we'll come back in and add more enemies and make this a little bit better. But we're going to need the box collider 2D, and then we're also going to need to have the rigid body, so we can detect the collision or the trigger here. And then since we're adding this, we want to make sure that we adjust this gravity scale back to 0 again, just like in the last videos, so that way these enemies don't simply drop right to the ground. Now with that done, we'll go ahead and we're going to create a script. So create C# script, and this one we can call enemy movement. And then we'll go ahead and open the script. All right, so once we have the script open, we're going to go ahead and remove the start because we don't need that here. So first off, we're going to need to get a reference for our speed here so we can decide how fast we want to move the enemies. So we're going to make this a serialized field so we have access to it in the editor. And this is going to be a float, and we'll simply call it speed. And by default, I think we're going to set it to 5 here as a starting speed. All right, and then in update here, we're going to want to move the enemies. So we can do a simple transform dot translate, and then we can go ahead and pass in a vector2. And if we do vector2 dot right, this is going to be very similar to vector2, and then marking like 1, 0 for 1 on the x-axis. And we're going to take this and we're going to multiply that by our speed. And then of course we're going to multiply this by the time dot delta time like usual here. Now doing this should already make our enemies move. So we'll go ahead and save that and test that out and make sure it's working properly. So back here in the editor, all we need to do is grab the enemy movement script and attach it to the enemies object. Now if we click on play, these should start moving to the right. Perfect. And they're not colliding with anything yet, but that's all right. Now back here in our script, the next thing that we're going to want to do is make it so when they collide that they turn the opposite way. So here we're going to do the on trigger, and make sure you do on trigger enter 2D. And then just like before in the other videos, we're going to get a reference to the object's name. So we're going to do a string and we're going to call this wall. And this is going to enter or equal our collision. So the object that we're colliding with, and then the game object dot name. So we're going to get the name of the object we're colliding with. And we called them walls. So here we're going to simply say if wall, and if this equals wall, then what we're going to want to do is, so all we're going to have to do is multiply our speed here by a -1. So we'll do speed times equals, and then we'll say -1. And this is going to make it basically reverse. So if we're going to the right here, it's going to be, our speed is 5f, we're going positive. But then if we hit this, then it's going to change it to a negative. It's going to multiply 5 by 1, or 5 by -1. So it's going to change this to a negative. So then it'll be -5. We'll be going to the left. And then if we're going to the left, it's going to hit this wall. It's going to change this back to a positive, or it's going to be a negative times a negative, which is positive. So then it's going to go back to the right and so on here. So we'll go ahead and we'll save this and jump back into the editor. So now if we test this and hit play, we should see the enemies bounce off and continue going back and forth here. Right side's working and left side's working. Perfect. So now all we need to do is we need to drop them down every time they hit the wall here. So back in the script here, this is going to be pretty easy as well. Something that we've, I believe, done before. So we're going to do the transform.position, and all we're going to do is we're going to change our position to 1 lower on the Y. So we're going to say that this equals a new vector 3. And then here we're going to have to pass in how we want the position for each of these parameters. So we want our X to remain the same. So we're going to simply say transform.position.x. And then we're going to put in the comma here. And then the next one is the Y position. So we're going to say transform.position .y. And we're going to actually just say -1 on this for now. I believe that'll work pretty good for us. And then transform.position.z, we want this to remain the same. So we're just going to set it to our current position. And then we'll go ahead and save this. And now this should be all that we have to add here. So back in the editor, if we click on play here, we should see the enemies go over here to the right. They should drop down 1, to the left, drop down 1. Perfect. So everything seems to be working. All right, so now that we have the movement working, I'm going to go ahead and set up my enemies here. You feel free to set yours up however you would like. I'll probably do a couple rows of different colors, but we'll go ahead and do that now. All right, so all that I did there was I simply selected one, duplicated it, and moved it over to kind of make it look all right here. And then the last thing that we need to do as well is we need to, this box collider here, we need to edit this again. So once we have our enemies selected, we'll click on this and we're going to want to edit the, we'll click on edit the box collider here and we'll readjust the size. So it's surrounding our new bunch of enemies here. Perfect. And then that is all that we should have to do. And so we'll go ahead and we'll test this out one last time. Make sure it's still working as expected. So it should bump down, bump down, bump down. All right, perfect. Everything looks like it is working as expected. All right, the next thing here is to add the ability for the player ship to fire some rockets that will travel up the screen. So we'll go ahead and do that now. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a spawn point here on the front of the player, and this is going to be used for the area that we spawn the bullets. So we'll go ahead and we'll click on the player and we're going to right click and then we're going to do a create empty here. And we're going to call this one spawn point. And then we'll go ahead and we'll move this down here to where we want it to be. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and we want it to be right at the front of the player ship here. And then we'll go ahead and we'll make the bullet that we're going to use, and we're simply going to go ahead and use a circle here. So we'll go ahead and create a circle, and then we'll call this bullet. And then we're gonna scale this down. So if we scale maybe a little bit like this, and then we're gonna use the rect tool here, and if we drag it in, we can kind of make it look like an oval-ish. So kind of makes it look more like a bullet here. So I think that looks okay. And then we'll maybe add some color to this as well. So we can come over here and we can select a color. I don't know, maybe a bluish. I think that looks all right. So maybe we'll go with this color. So that'll be our bullets for our player. And then we're gonna want to make these prefabs. So we're gonna drag this down into our prefab folder here, and that's going to make it a prefab. So that way we can go ahead and delete it for now, and then we'll spawn that via a script. So to do that, we're gonna go ahead and create a new script. And this one we can call bullet. And then we'll go ahead and open this script up. So inside this script, we're actually going to be able to remove all of this stuff here, and we're not going to need a lot of stuff. We're going to start off with a serialized field, and then we're going to call this one float, or this one's going to be a float, and we're going to call it speed. And we're going to go ahead and set this to 10F for now. And then inside of update, all we have to do is we're going to simply say transform.translate. And then we're going to do transform.up. And we're going to multiply this by our speed. And then we're going to multiply that by the time.delta time. Now, that should be all that we really need for the bullet script. This is going to send the bullet up and multiplied by the speed. So it's going to send it up by this amount of speed, this fast. So once we'll save that, we'll go ahead and jump back into the editor. So we're going to go ahead and double click on the bullet here, and then we're going to go to our scripts folder, and we're going to drag the script over here. So that way it's on the bullet now. And then the last thing that we're going to need is we're going to need a script on the player, and that one's going to be to fire the bullet. So we'll go ahead and we'll create a new script here, and we'll call it fire bullet. And open that up. So in here, we can go ahead and remove the start, as we're not going to need that. And we'll remove these extra comments here as well. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to need a couple serialized fields again. So the first one that we're going to need is going to be a game object. And this is going to be for the bullet. And then the next one that we're going to need is going to be a transform. And this is going to be for the spawn point that we created. So we'll go ahead and call that spawn point. And then now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to fire the bullet. So to fire the bullet, all we have to do is we're going to instantiate the bullet. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to instantiate the bullet. And then we're going to want to put in where we want to instantiate it at. So we're going to do spawn point dot position. So that's going to be the position of the spawn point that we created. And then we're also going to want to do spawn point dot rotation. So it'll have the position and the rotation of the spawn point that we created. And then if we wanted to make this a little bit cleaner, what we can do here is we can do control period and then extract this method, and then we can call this one fire, for example. So now we're going to be calling fire here. And then what we want to do to call fire is when the player presses the space key. So this is going to be an if input, and then we're going to go ahead and do get, and then get key down. So when the key is pressed, and then we'll go ahead and we'll use the key code. So key code, and then we want to use space, so dot space. And then when that happens, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to fire. So we'll go ahead and move that up here. So if the player presses the space button, then we're going to fire, and fire is going to instantiate the bullet at the spawn point's position and rotation. So we'll go ahead, we'll save that and hop back in the editor here and add that to the player. So we're going to go into the prefab and we'll double click again onto the prefab here. And you can either add the component over here or simply go to the script folder and click and drag the script over here. And now once we have it added, we do need to add a couple of different things here. So back in here, what we need to do is we need to add the bullet and the spawn point. So if we expand the player here, we can select the spawn point and drag that in as the transform. And then we can go into our prefabs and add the bullet as the bullet. So then we'll go ahead and save this. And now we should be able to fire bullets from our player. So we'll click play here. And now if we click the space button, the bullets are firing, which I think looks pretty nice. Move on to the next step here. I want to change a couple of things. So if we play the game, you'll see that the background's kind of plain, and also the players are, or the enemies here, are moving pretty fast. I think that that's way too fast for this game here. So I'm going to go ahead and change a couple of these things. So on the enemies, I'm going to change the speed. It's currently at 5. I think we're going to put it to 2.5 for now and test that out here. I think that's much better for this game. I think that'll play a lot better. We might even have to make it a little bit slower, or maybe change the enemy layout here a little later. We'll see. So the other thing that I'm going to change here is the background. So on the asset store here, I've been looking and I think I like this one here. I liked the look of the blue one, which I think I'm going to use. I like this one. So I've already got this added to my project, but if you needed to, you can come in here, find an asset that you liked. You can click on them, add them to your assets, and from here, accept the agreements. And then you can simply click on open in Unity if you want, and that will open it right away. Or back here in the editor, if you clicked on Unity or Windows, sorry, and then package manager, and then change this to my assets, then you can come down here and you can find the asset that you downloaded. You would click on, or got from the asset store, you would click on download and then import, and then you would go ahead and import everything into your game here. I've already done this, so I'm not going to do it again, but that's how you can get them into your game. And then once you have it here, this one I've already taken a look at, and I like this blue one here. So I'm going to simply drag it onto my game, and I like the look of kind of this. So how it a little black with a little bit of the blue. So I think I'm going to go with that right there. And then you'll notice that this made everything pretty much disappear except for these enemies. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the order and layer, and we can set this to something like -5 or any number that's really lower than 0, basically. And it's going to bring everything else to the front here. So now if we go ahead and click on play, we can take a look at how this looks. And I think it looks a little bit better, makes it look like we're actually in space. So we'll go ahead and we'll stick with this for now. And then that with the slower enemies, I think makes it much nicer. So the next thing here is to add bombs or bullets that the enemies drop, and then the player's rocket is going to be able to destroy the enemy bullets. So we'll go ahead and craft our own little rocket, I think. We'll use a circle, and then we'll use a square here as well, I think. And so let's see here. Let's move it to the side a little bit so we can make it look a little easier. And then we'll go ahead and we'll change the size here of these things. It's gonna need to be a lot smaller. And the same with the circle here. Let me kind of zoom in here and see what it's looking like. I don't know, I think something like that's going to be all right for our purposes. And then I'm going to go ahead and combine these two. I'm going to rename this one to rocket. And then let's actually select both of these and change the color as well. Maybe, I don't know, maybe a grayish color. Look a little bit more like a bullet. Or we could do, I think these will be too, I think that's too colorful, I think. I think we'll go with a little grayish color here. Right there, I think will look all right. And then what we're also going to want to do is we're going to want to bring this down here and turn this into a prefab. So we'll go into the prefab folder and drag that down there as well. Now we have that as a prefab and we can delete this. Now we'll work on getting the enemies to drop these bullets. And I think we're going to have them drop at a random interval between all of the enemies. And maybe the rocket will go a little bit slower here, so we can still technically have the ability to dodge them or shoot them with our ship. So to make the rocket drop here, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new script and we're going to call this one rocket. And then we'll go ahead and open that up. And what we're going to do is I'm going to copy what's in the bullet script here, since we're basically going to want this to do the same thing. And then here for the speed, I'm actually going to maybe cut this in half because I want it to go quite a bit slower than how fast the player can shoot, since there's going to be a lot more of them. And then here, instead of going up, we're actually going to simply say negative to make this go down. Then we'll go ahead and we'll save that. Hop back into the editor here and attach this to the prefab. So we're going to find the rocket, and then we're going to type in add component over here and we'll add the rocket script. And now if we were to spawn one of these rockets here in the game and click on play, this should fall down to the ground. Perfect. I still think that speed's pretty fast actually, so I'm going to change this to 2 maybe and try this one more time here. I think that'll be all right for now. If we want to, once we get a bunch more of them spawning here, I will adjust it. All right, so now that we have the rocket able to move, the next thing that we're going to need to do is have the enemies actually spawn the rockets here. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to delete this from the scene here to start off with, since we don't need it there anymore. And then down in the scripts, I'm going to create a new C# script, and we're going to call this fire rocket. And we'll go ahead and open that one up. And once we have this opened up here, we're going to need to do a couple of things. So first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to need a serialized field here. And this one's going to be for the rocket. So we're going to call this one, this is going to be of type game object, and we can simply call it rocket. And then we're also going to need a float, and this is going to be, we can call this one fire time. And so this is going to be the time in between when the rocket drops first, when the enemy spawns one, how long does it have to wait before it can spawn another one. And then in start here, we're gonna set this fire time initially to this is gonna be set initially to a random range, so we're gonna do random.range, and then I'm gonna do 3f and 10f for this to start with. That way they're not all going at the exact same time at the beginning. And then in here in update, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to basically say if the time, so if the time of the game is greater than our fire time, then we want to do something. And what we want to do is we want to fire the rocket. So we're going to call this, we're going to call it fire. we're just simply going to say fire. And then what we'll do is we'll create this. So we can hit control period here, and we're going to generate a method for fire down here. And then what fire is going to do is we're going to instantiate. So we're going to spawn the bullet. And then here we called it rocket. So we're going to instantiate the rocket. And then here we have to also set the position and the rotation for the items. So over here, we're going to have to set the position and the rotation if we use this one. So we're just going to simply say transform dot position and transform dot rotation, because we want the bullet or the rocket to be spawning at the enemy's position and rotation. And this right here won't quite work as you would expect. So if we save this, and I'll show you here. And now if we come back in here and go back into our prefabs and, for example, add fire rocket to our prefabs, and if we add the rocket to the script over here for the rocket, then we'll do this for each of the prefabs. So now we have the rocket, or the fire rocket script, and the rocket attached to each one of the enemies. Now if we click on play here, it's going to fire. However, yeah, it's going to continuously fire like this because the time is always now greater than the fire time. So that's not what we want to happen. So if we jump back into the script here, one thing that we can do is we can simply set the fire time, and we can set this equal to the time plus, and then here we can do a random range again. So a random dot range, and we can set this one to something. I mean, we could set it to the same values as we had before, but I'm going to set it to actually 6F and 10F. That way the bullets don't spawn quite as often, hopefully. And I think this will be good, but we can go ahead and save that, and then we'll check this out again. So back here now, if we play the game again, now we'll see it'll start after the 3 seconds here. They'll start spawning, and they're only dropping one at a time. So there's still quite a few of them dropping, but you have to understand, we'll also be, killing these as time goes on. So there won't be quite so many. Now that we have the rocket moving here, the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to have the rocket and bullet collide. And when they collide, we're going to destroy both of them. Now to do that, we're going to go into the rocket here. We'll start with the rocket first, and we're going to add a collider. So we're going to be looking for probably a capsule collider, and we'll want the 2D one. And then I'm going to drag the rocket on here to check this out and see how it looks. And then if you click on the edit collider here, we can see how the collider is set up. And I'm actually going to edit the collider here and just make it a little bit further down here and maybe a little bit bigger. So it covers the whole rocket. And then we'll go ahead and we'll delete that out of the scene as we won't need it anymore. And then the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go into the bullet, and we're also going to want a collider in here. I'm going to use the capsule collider again. And similar to before, I'm going to drag the bullet onto the screen here just to get a look of the capsule collider, make sure it's set up right. And this one looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that from the scene. And then also on the bullet here, I'm going to also want to add in a rigid body. So we're going to go ahead and add in a rigid body 2D. And I'm going to actually make this one kinematic as well. And then one thing that I forgot is on the capsule collider, we're going to want to make this an is trigger, and also on the rocket, we want to set that to is trigger as well. Now we'll go ahead and we'll jump into the script. So inside of our bullet script here, this is where we'll do everything that we need to for this. What we're actually going to do is I'm going to go into the enemy movement script, and I'm going to copy this that we have already, this on trigger enter, as we basically want the same thing here. So we're going to do another one. So on trigger enter. So when we trigger something here, when that happens, we're going to just change a couple of things. So instead of wall, we're going to call this rocket. And then down here also we'll change this to rocket. And then if the wall equals rocket. And then what we don't want to do, we don't want to move the position. So we're going to delete this, and all we're going to do is have to type in destroy. And then we're destroying the object that we collide with. So the collision.game object. And then we also want to destroy the object, our current object. So we're going to say this.game object as well. So that'll destroy the bullet. And then this one here will destroy what we're colliding with, which is the rocket. So we'll go ahead and we'll save that. And back in the editor here, if we click on play, once this starts up here, we should get a couple bullets coming down. And if we shoot, you'll see that nothing's actually happening. And the reason why, if we look at the script here, we're looking for something called rocket. However, you'll see over here when these are instantiated, they're actually called the rocket and then clone in the afterwards. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and fix that. So back in the script here, we're going to say rocket with a clone afterwards in parentheses, and then we'll save that, and then we'll try this again. So now if we click on play, now this time when a rocket comes down here, if we go to try to shoot it, you can see that it's destroying them. All right, so that's working. However, one thing that I noticed, these are still moving. They're moving way too fast. So in the rocket, I'm actually going to cut this down to maybe a speed of 2 for now. And we'll check that out. I think that'll be quite a bit better. The enemies are also moving pretty fast. I'm gonna change that as well. I think that's a lot better, but we'll also change the enemy's movement speed. I think we'll move this down to 1 maybe. I think that's much better. Okay, I think that we'll stick with this for now. One other thing that I think we'll do is for the actual rocket itself, I think we'll jump in here and maybe we'll give this some color. I know we didn't really give it any color before, but for now, let's maybe change this to like a, I don't know, like an orangish color. And then the square itself, maybe we can change this as well. Maybe a little darker gray, I think might look okay. See what that looks like. I think it's a little bit better. So I think we'll leave it at that for now. And then we'll keep going, and we'll probably continue making adjustments here as we finish adding the rest of the items. All right, so before I move on to the next step here, one thing that I do want to clean up is the bullets. So I want to make sure that when we're firing the bullets and the rockets are being fired by the enemy, that they don't continue to pile up. So we're going to go ahead and destroy those things. So to do that, it's going to be pretty easy. We're going to hop over into scripts here. We're going to create a new script, and we're going to call it destroy. We'll call it destroy bullets, and open that up. Now inside the script here, we're going to go ahead and remove this update, as we won't need update. And all we have to do is we're going to simply call destroy, and we're going to say this dot game object, and then we're going to put a comma and then a 5 after it. That's going to tell us to do it in 5 seconds. And then we'll go ahead and hit save. Now back in the editor, if we go on to our prefabs and we select our bullet prefab, for example, if we add the script in here, so if we search for destroy bullets, we'll add it here, and then also on the rocket prefab. Now it's added to both of those. Now if we hit play here, we'll go ahead and start the game up, and then if we fire the bullet, for example, a couple times, we fired it 3 times here, and then after a couple seconds, after 5 seconds, you'll see that they disappeared. And then also you'll notice that the rockets are being deleted every 5 seconds as well, so they're not continuing to pile up here. So that's working as expected. And now the next step here is to make sure that the player's bullets destroy the invaders and that the invader bullets destroy the player. So that's pretty easy. We've already done a lot of this similar stuff already. So we'll go ahead and jump right into that. We're going to continue to use the on triggers. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into each of the enemy prefabs here, and we're going to add a collider. So we're going to simply add a box collider 2D to these. The same with the purple enemy and the red enemy. And then we're also going to mark all of these as is trigger. And then one other thing that we're going to want to do as well in here is add a tag. So there's already tags created for us by Unity, and the one that I'm going to use is enemy, as it makes sense. So I'm going to also select this for all of the enemies that we have here. So green, purple, and red. Now that we have the prefab set up, if we jump into the script, all that we have to do here, if we jumped into the bullet script, we'll start with that one. Now, what we want to do is if the rocket, we'll leave this part the same, but then we're going to also add a statement here saying or. So we're going to say or the collision dot tag, so the tag of the item that we're colliding with, and we're going to say if that equals enemy, then we're going to want to destroy, again, the object we're colliding with and this object, so the bullet. So we'll go ahead, save that. So if we go ahead and test that here back in the editor, now we should see when we fire the bullet that it actually kills the enemies. So it's killing the purple ones, killing the green ones, still killing the rockets. And if we can hit one, it is also killing the red ones. So it looks like it is working. So then now we also need to make it so that if the player gets hit by a rocket, the player also gets destroyed. So to do that, what we're going to want to do is we're going to actually want to go back into our prefabs, go into the player prefab here, and then we're going to want to tag this one, and we're going to tag it with the player. So then now we're going to hop into the rocket script instead of the bullet script, and then we're going to do basically the same thing that we're doing here. So we'll go ahead, we'll copy this and paste it, and then what we're going to want to do is we don't need this anymore, but we're going to want the collision tag. So we're going to say if the collision dot tag, and then this time it's going to say if it equals player, then we're going to destroy both of the objects. So we'll go ahead, save that, and test it out. Oops, I added an S, so we'll go ahead and save that and test it out. So now if we hit play here and let ourselves get hit by one of the rockets, we should end up getting destroyed. So that's all still working. And now if we get hit by the rocket, nothing's happening. And this is going to be because our player doesn't have a collider on it. So we're going to go ahead and add a collider on the player, and we'll do a box collider, I believe. I think that'll be the best. And let's go ahead and go into the player object here and edit the collider to take a look at it. So the collider's way up here. That's not what we want. We'll go ahead, we'll move this down here. Make it as close as we can. I think that'll be all right. And then we'll go ahead and we'll save that and try it out again. And before we do that though, we do want to also make this a trigger since we're using the trigger method. So we'll go ahead, save that and click play now. And now if we get hit by a rocket here, this should destroy us. Perfect. The next goal here for us is to add a mothership that's going to cross the screen periodically, and destroying it's going to result in bonus points. We're going to hold off on the points and handle that down here in the next goal, and then we'll just do all the points at the same time when we're setting up the UI for the player score. So back here in our editor, what we'll want to do is we'll want to actually create the mothership, and in the assets that I downloaded before for our player ship and our enemies here, there is actually one in here called human boss that I think will work okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in here, kind of take a look at it like this. And maybe we'll change the color or something like that first, maybe to a bluish color maybe. That looks all right. Yeah, I think we'll go with that color. Go ahead, feel free to, make that look however you would like yours to look. But then what we're going to do is we're going to make this move from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen. So, it'll go just like this, and then it'll bounce back and so on and so forth until we destroy it or we die. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is I'm going to want to rename this here, and I'm going to call it Mothership. And then we're going to make this prefab. So I'm going to drag it down into our prefab folder as well. And then we'll go ahead and I'm going to create a new script. And so we'll right click in the scripts folder, create a new script, and we'll call this Mothership Movement. And go ahead and open that. So for this one, we can go ahead and get rid of start as we won't need that. So the first thing that we're going to need is a couple of serialized fields. So we'll start off with the first one here, and that's going to be a vector 3. And we'll simply call this point A. This is going to be our starting position, and then we're going to want point B as well. That's going to be our ending position. And then we're going to need another one here, and this one's going to be a float, and we're going to call this one repeat time. And we'll set this one to maybe 0.5f for now, and we might change that in the inspector here in a little bit. And then what we need to do to get this to move is we're going to say if repeat time is greater than 0, then we're going to want to take the transform dot position, and that's going to equal a new vector 3 dot lerp, and this is going to be point A and then a comma point B, so the 2 points that it's going between. And then to get the third one here, the float T, we're actually going to use math.f or mathf, and then dot ping pong. And this is going to take a couple parameters as well. We're going to use time.time, and then we're going to say repeat time divided by, and parentheses, and then we're going to divide that by repeat time as well. So this should move us from the left side here where we'll fill out our point A, and should go to point B and back and forth here based upon how high we have this number here will dictate the speed that we use. So we'll go ahead, save that. We'll come back into the editor here, and we'll add the script that we just created onto the mothership. And then we're going to have to fill out the point A and point B. So if we go to the mothership, currently our position is -10 and 3.15. I think we'll simply go -10 and 3. I think that's a pretty good starting location here for us. So we're going to use that as the as the starting location down here, so point A, and then point B we want to be on the other side, so this should simply be 10 and 3, and that should put us over here. And we can test that, you know, we can type in 10 here, and that's going to move us over here. So we'll go ahead and we'll put this back to -10. We can save this and we'll hit play to test that out. Okay, so it's working, but you can see that this is going way too fast. So we can change the repeat time to something higher. Maybe that'll make it slower. That's still pretty fast. Something like this, maybe even 3. I don't know. Depends on how hard you want it to be for the player to hit, I suppose. But yeah, you'd want to move this number up to find a good number that fits for you. I think 4 is decent, so I think I'm gonna put it to 4. So we'll go ahead and stop, and then you have to make sure to change this after you start, or after you stop playing the game, and then we'll go ahead and save it, and that's that part taken care of. And one last thing that I forgot to do with the mothership was make it so the player can actually destroy the mothership. So what we'll want to do is we'll go into the mothership here. We'll actually go into the prefab for the mothership. And then for the tag, I'm going to go ahead and add a new tag, and I'm going to call this one boss and save it. And then we're going to go back into the mothership here, and we're going to select that tag we just created. So it's now it has the tag of boss. And once we have that tag set up, we'll go into our scripts, and we're going to go to the bullet CS script here. And we're also, all we have to do here is add another or and say if collision dot tag, if that equals boss. So now that should also work for the mothership. So we'll go ahead and save that and test that out quick. So back here, we'll go ahead, play the game one more time, and we'll try to shoot the mothership down maybe. And I don't think that it's working, so it doesn't look like it's working. And the reason it's not working is because we never added the collider on here. So we're going to want to add a box collider 2D. And since I only clicked up here, didn't actually go into the mothership itself, into the prefab, what you can do is up here in the top right, you can click on overrides, and you can actually go ahead and apply all of your changes. So I can do that, and then that's going to actually apply to the mothership prefab as well. And then the last thing, once we do add the collider here, we're going to need to go ahead and mark that as is trigger, and then we'll go ahead and play the game one more time and check it out this last time here. And you saw there, we shot it, and we can shoot it down. Perfect. Okay, so the next challenge here, or the next goal, is to add the UI that's going to track the player's score and the lives left, and the player is going to start with 3 lives. So we've done this in the last couple of games as well, so we should be able to do that pretty easily at this point. So back in the editor here, the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to need to create a canvas. So that's going to be down in UI and then canvas. And then the next thing is, if we don't have it installed already, we're going to want to go into our package manager, and we're going to want to go to Unity registry and then find TextMesh Pro. And it looks like ours is already installed. Now, I've had a couple issues with this before, so I'm going to go ahead and go down here to TextMesh Pro and the package resources, and do the double click on the essential resources and just import this right away so we don't have any issues with it. If you're having an issue with yours not showing, this is something like your text box is not showing properly, you might have to do this yourself. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the canvas here, and then under the canvas, we're going to go down to the TextMesh Pro, and we're going to add the text. And that pops up here. And so this one, we're going to change the text, and this is going to say score. And then we'll need to move this as well. And you'll see that the canvas is a lot bigger than our game. I like to have it the same size as the game here. So what I like to do is on the canvas itself, you can change this to screen space camera, and then you can actually drag your main camera into the render camera, and that's going to move the canvas to the same size as your game view, if you will. So then we'll go ahead and we'll select the Text Mesh Pro here, and I'm going to move this over to the top left corner. I'll probably drop the size down here to 32. I think that'll look okay. So for the hearts, I'm going to use this one. I used this on the last game as well, and I like the look of the heart here. So I'm going to go ahead and open this one up. You can find this on the asset store. I'll go ahead and access it here, and I'm going to import this. And I only want the hearts. I don't need everything else. So I only want the heavy heart red here. So I'm going to go ahead and select only that one and import it. And so then we have that here. So then the next thing that we're going to want to do to add the heart is in the canvas. What we can do is we can come down to UI and we can add a raw image, and then we can actually attach this to the texture, and that's going to put the heart like this. So then we'll want to go ahead and we'll need to resize this to something that fits our game a little bit better. And then we'll move this over to where we want it to be, about right here maybe. And then I'm going to Control D to duplicate this because I'll need 3 of them. So then I'll just move this, the second one here, and this one maybe over here. And then I'm going to rename these. So I'm going to call this one Heart 1. This one will be Heart 3. And then this one will be Heart 2. Oops. So this one will be Heart 3. This one will be Heart 2. And then we're going to add the score so it shows up here. And then when the player gets killed, we're going to remove one of the hearts. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to work on getting the score to display here. So we're going to go into our scripts folder, create a new C# script, and we're going to just call this one score. Go ahead and open that up. And now in here, what we're going to need to do is towards the top, we're going to want to make a serialized field, and we'll call this one, this is going to be of type TMP_text. And we can call this one like the score TMP, for example. And then we're also going to need to get a reference to the score. So we're going to want to make this one public so we can access it from outside the script as well. This is going to be an int, and we can call this one player score. And we're going to set this to 0 by default here. And then we're not going to need the start, so we're going to go ahead and delete that, and we'll delete this comment here about update as well. And then below update here, we're going to create our own function, and this is going to be a private void, and then we're going to call it set score text to describe what we're doing here. And then inside here, all we're going to do is we're going to go to the score TMP, and then we're going to go to .set text. And this is going to be in parentheses here. It's going to be score, how we have it typed out in our editor. And then we're going to say plus the player score. And that's all that we need to do for this script here. So we'll jump back into the editor. And then now we're going to want to add this script to the UI. And then we're going to want to expand the canvas. And then we're going to want to add this text item here into the script. And I'm also going to rename this to score text so we know what it is. And then we're going to need to jump back into our bullet script. And this is where we're going to do a couple of things as well. Since this is going to be the script that's attached to the bullet, which is going to be colliding with the enemies. And then at that time, that's when we're going to update the score. So we'll add a couple of things in here. First, we're going to need to add a reference to the score. So we're going to do score and we'll simply call it score. And then I'm going to make these serialized, but you don't have to make these serialized fields, but I'm going to add two other ints here. One's for the enemy score. So how much we should get when we kill an enemy. I'm going to set that to 1 for now, but we can change that later. And I'm also going to add one for when we kill the boss. So boss score, and I'm going to set that to 5 for now, I think. And then we're going to also go ahead and do an awake method here. And on awake, we're going to set score. And this is going to be equal to, we're going to find object of type and then the type is going to be score. So that way we can get a reference to that and set that reference. And then let's see here, we already have this in an update, so we don't need to make any changes in there. And then down here on the collision, this is where we'll make a couple of changes as well. So I think we'll leave this part the same. However, what we'll do is down here we'll add another if statement, and then we're going to say if the collision dot game object dot tag, and we're going to say if that equals enemy, then here we're going to want to update the score. So we're going to go to score dot player score, and we're going to set that to plus equals the enemy score. So we're going to add, it's going to start at the player score, and then we're going to add whatever the enemy score is to it continuously here every time we destroy an enemy. And then also we'll want to add another one. So if this equals boss, then we want to do something similar, and we're going to go to score dot player score, and this one's going to be plus equals boss score. So that should add the boss score to whatever the current player score is. Now, if we jump back into the editor here, we should be able to press play and this should work. All right, so our score isn't displaying yet. All right, so back in the score script, I forgot to actually call set score text. So here in update, we'll need to call that and save that. And now if we jump back into the editor here and press play, this should update our score, should set it to 0 by default. And then when we kill an enemy, it should go up by 1, which it is doing. And then if we wait for the boss and we kill it, you see that it jumps up by 5. So the score is working, and then now we'll work on tackling the hearts. So before we start with the hearts, what we're going to want to do is when the player dies, we're going to want it to pause the game, and then we're going to respawn the player here in the middle of the screen. And then we're also going to have it so that the player has to click again, or click, so that way the game will start again. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to come down here, we're going to create a new script, and we're going to call this one, I don't know, pause control. And then we'll go ahead and open this up. So in this script, we're not going to need the start method. So we're going to go ahead and delete that. And then we're going to go ahead and create a public bool, and we'll call this one pause. And we're going to set this by default to false. So here in update, we're going to want to say if pause is equal to true, and if the player is pressing the left mouse button, so input dot get mouse button down, and we'll set that to 0. Then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set pause to false. And we're also going to set what's the time dot time scale. And we're going to set this to 1. And then we'll save that. And we're going to do some other things here in the Rocket script that will make this make more sense. So back in the editor here, we're going to want to add the script to the UI. However, I realized that I didn't capitalize pause control here. So I'm going to fix this. I'm going to change it here. And then you also need to go back into the script, and we'll need to change that as well. So here we're going to have to change up the top here to pause control, and we'll save that. And then now back in the editor here, we're going to add the script to our UI here. And now we'll jump into the Rocket script, and this is where we're going to do quite a few different things here. So we're going to get, our first one is we're going to get a reference to the script, the pause control script. So we're going to say pause control, and we'll simply call it pause control. And then we're going to need to get some positions and rotations where we want to spawn our player. So here we're going to make 2 serialized fields in case we want to change these later. But we'll make the first one is going to be a vector 3. And this is simply going to be spawn position. And then we're going to make another one here. This is going to be a quaternion. And this is going to be spawn rotation. So now we're going to do an awake method. And in here, we're going to set pause control. And we're going to set that equal to find object of type. And then that type is going to be pause control. So we're finding this script here. And then down here in the collision, so when we're colliding with the player, we're already destroying the rocket and the player object. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to also pause the game. So this is where we'll set the time dot time scale. And we're going to set this one to 0. And then we're going to need to spawn in the player. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to create a new method called spawn player. And inside of here, we're simply going to instantiate the player. And we're going to set where we want it to be. So that's going to be the spawn position, a comma, and then the spawn rotation. And then up here, after we pause the game, we're going to call spawn player. And then we're going to want to set the pause, whether or not we're paused as well. So we're going to go to pause control, dot pause, and we're going to set that equal to true. So when the player gets hit, we're going to pause the game, spawn the player at the coordinates that we enter down here, and then we're going to set pause to equal true. And then back here in pause control, when pause is equal to true, the player can also come in. They'll have the ability to click the mouse button, and then that's going to set a pause equal to false. And then we're going to resume the game by setting the time scale here. So if we hop back in the editor and click play, we can still shoot, we can still get enemies, all of that's still working. And now if we get hit, it's going to pause the game and it respawns the player here right in the middle of the screen. And now if I left click, it resumes the game. If I left click now, which I'm doing, it's not doing anything as we're not actually paused. But if I hit another thing, it pauses the game, respawns us here in the middle, and then I left click to start again, which is what we're looking for. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that when the player is getting hit, they're also removing the hearts, which we'll take care of here shortly. Next up, we want to work on the health system here. So what we'll do is we're going to start off by creating another script, and we're going to call this one player health. And we'll want to open that up here. And now in this script, we're going to have to do a couple of different things. We're going to start off by setting up some serialized fields so we can get references to the heart game objects. So we're going to need 3 of them. So we're going to do serialized field, and this is going to be a game object, and we'll call this one heart1, and we'll do the same thing, heart2 and heart3. And then we're going to want to set up a reference for the health. So we'll go ahead and make this one public, and this is going to be an int, and we'll call this one health. Then down here in start, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set health to 3 by default. And now in update, what we're going to do is we're going to actually use a switch statement. So instead of an if statement, so we're going to go ahead and do switch. And this is going to be for, we're going to put in health here. So when health, and then we're going to have the cases. So we're going to have a case of when it's equal to 3. What we want to do is we want to have heart1 is going to be set active, and we want this to be true. And we're going to want to have heart2 set active to true, and the same with a heart3 set active to true. So when we have 3 lives, all of these are going to be true. They're all going to be turned on, and then we'll break. And then next we're going to have the case 2, and we're going to want to do something very similar. So we're going to need heart1, heart2, and heart3. However, if we only have 2 lives, then we only want heart1 to be turned off. So these other 2 will be set to true. And then we'll enter in our break. And then here we're going to need another case, and this one's going to be if we have 1 life. And so then here what we'll do is we'll just simply copy these up above. Come down here, we'll paste them, and then if we're only having 1 life, then heart1 should be false, and heart2 should also be false because we only want the 3rd heart to show. And then we'll go ahead and we'll do our break. And then we have our case 0. So this is going to be like by default. And then we'll want to go ahead, we'll paste all of them in again. And in this case, these are all going to be set to false because we have no lives. And then here we can go ahead and we'll add in our break. Now, if we go back to the editor here, and if we add player health to the UI, what we can do is we can drag in a reference for, we'll drag in each one of these hearts. So heart1 is going to be here, heart2, and heart3 is for heart3. And then we'll go ahead and we'll save that and press play. So now what should happen is if we get hit, we should lose a heart. The game pauses, and now we can keep playing. And now if we get hit again, we lose another heart, the game pauses, and we can keep playing again. So then we lose the last heart. And now we'd probably want to put some type of a reset button in here, because otherwise, we'll just keep playing and this is probably going to error out. We just keep going forever, even though we lost the last one. So when we have 0 lives, we'll probably want to put a menu button pop up here that we can restart the game with. So here what we'll do is we'll go back into the canvas. We're going to right click and we're going to add a button. And then I think all we'll have to do really for this is go into the button. I'll rename this to reset button. we can open this up and change the text to reset. And we're going to want to have this turned off by default. And then back in our scripts, if we go into player health, what we can do is we can set up another serialized field. And this one is going to be of type button. And we can call this reset button. And then what we'll also want to do is down here when we have case 0, so we have 0 lives left, we're going to want to actually reset the health. Oops. And we're going to want to reset that back to 3. Otherwise, we'll run into issues. And then right above that, we're going to want to set the reset button dot game object dot set active. And we're going to want to set this to true. So this way, the button will spawn when we have 0 hearts remaining. And then back in the editor, we're going to want to create one more script, and we can simply call this one menu, since it's going to involve the menu technically, like the reset button. Now we'll go ahead and open this up, and then inside here, we can remove start and update. Here we'll create another serialized field. This is going to be of type button, and we can call this one again reset button. And then here we're going to create our own little method. We'll call this one will be a public void. We'll call this one reload level. And then all we need to do is we're going to do the scene manager dot load scene, and we're going to want to load scene 0, so our first scene. And then we're also going to want to set the reset button to false. We'll go ahead and we'll save that, hop back into our editor here, and then we'll add the menu script to the UI. And then over here, we'll want to get a reference to the button. So we'll go ahead and we'll drag that button over here. We'll also need to drag it over here to the player health script. And then now if we play the game, we can still shoot, still kill everything. If we get hit, it does spawn us over here still, but we're not getting the button yet because we still have 2 hearts. Now we have 1 heart. Now we have 3 hearts, and now the game is stopped. We can still click outside of the button, and the game will keep going like this. And reset doesn't do anything. So we'll need to fix a couple of those things. So to fix reset from doing something, what we can do is we'll need to come in here onto the button, and we need to add the ability here to do something. So in here, we're going to want to get a reference. The object is going to be to the UI, and then the function is going to be underneath the menu script that we created, and it's going to be reload level. So that should reload the level there. And then we'll still need to fix the ability for the player to click outside the button as well. We can do that by coming over here, and we just need to get a reference to this pause control, and we need to set it to false. So what we'll do, and then we want that to happen right here when we have on case 0. So we'll need to get the reference over here, similar to how we did it on the rocket, like we did here. So back in the player health script, we're gonna do this again, and we'll do it at the top, and we're gonna type in again pause control, and we'll call it paused control. And then we did it on the other one, we did it on
in an awake method. So we can go ahead and we'll do something similar. We'll simply copy this and come back over here and paste it. And now we don't actually need the player health one. So we'll do this and make this sure this says pause control, not paused control. And then now down here in case 0, what we'll do is we're going to want to set pause control dot pause, and we'll say equals false. So now when we have 0 lives, this is going to be false. And since this is false, the player won't be able to, this won't be true. So they won't be able to resume it. They'll have to resume by clicking the button that we set up. So we'll go ahead and save the script and jump back into the editor here. And now if we click play, we'll go ahead, it will die once, we'll restart, die twice, restart, die 3 times. The buttons here, if I click outside of the button, it's not allowing me to do anything. And if I click reset, it does restart the game, but you'll see that there are still instances of the bullets are still there, which is not what we want. And I'm also unable to resume the game. All right, so for the 2 issues that we have here about the game not resuming once we click the reload level button, and also for the issue with the rockets not being deleted, we can fix both of those pretty easily here in the menu script. So to fix the reload issue, all we have to do is come down here, and after this we're going to put in time.timescale, and we're going to set that to 1 to turn it back on. And then to fix the issue with the rockets, what we'll want to do is we'll come up here and we're going to create a new game object, and we're going to make this an array, and then we'll call this one rockets. And then we're going to go ahead and create an update method, and inside update we're going to set rockets, and these are going to equal 2, and we're going to do game object dot find game object with tag, and we're going to set that tag to rocket. And then what we'll need to do is we're going to also need to come down here, and we're going to create a new method, and we're going to call this, this is going to be private void, and we're going to call it destroy rockets. And inside here, we're going to do a for loop, and we're basically going to say for, and then this is the standard one. It's going to pop up for you automatically here. But for each rocket that's inside of this array, we're going to go through and we're going to destroy them. So then we'll say destroy rockets I. We'll go ahead, save that. And back in the editor, one thing that we have to do is we have to add the tag to our rocket prefab here. So we'll come here, we'll select this, we'll add tag, we'll create a new one called rocket, save that, and then we'll go back and we'll add that. Oops. We'll go back and we'll add that here. So now these are tagged with rocket. So if we go ahead and play this, everything should work as expected here. So we can still shoot, we can still destroy the enemies and the boss. If we get hit, it does put us back to the center here. We can click to resume the game. If we get hit, it's taking away our lives. And then we'll come over here, we'll get hit one more time. It pauses the game. Now when we click reset, the bullets should all clear out, and the enemies should, we should basically restart everything. So it does restart everything. However, you can see that there's kind of an issue with all of the bullets here spawning all at the same time, and we can fix that pretty easily. So for this, we'll come back here into our fire rocket script, and here we're having an issue with the time.time here. So what we can do is we can actually do time.time since level load, and we'd change it here and here as well. So now this isn't going to be the whole time of the game, but the time since we loaded the level. So if we save that and jump back into the editor here and try playing again, this should work how we expect it to. So again, all of this is working. Over here, we get hit once, hit twice, hit 3 times. Now if we reset, everything resets as we would expect it to now. So that was the last normal goal here. There are a couple of stretch goals. One of them is to build some bunkers and have them get destroyed. And then also the second one here is to just have fun and add some particle effects, sound, those kind of things. I'm going to skip the stretch goals for this video. This is something that we've basically already done in the game. We could add a couple objects that get broken by the rockets and have it take away health. We've basically done that with the scoreboard and the hearts already. And for the particle effects, I'm not too interested in this at this time. We've already done a couple of things with this as well in previous videos, and I think that we've learned a good amount making this video game. So I'm going to call it here for this. There's obviously more that you could do if you wanted to, but we'll go ahead and move on to the next challenge here. So thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.